It is my great honor to serve as the interim president for the Watauga County NAACP. Thank you so much for coming out. And I'd like to introduce Reverend Dr. Barber.
I'm glad to have both our interim president, past president, and it's good to be here in Watauga. We're on a tour across the state. More than 15 areas we'll be stopping in on tomorrow. More than 60 counties, and more than 60 counties, we will have what is called the Forward Together Moral March to the Polls, where people will actually be marching to the polls on the first day of early voting. You know, it's powerful to stand here today, and I was thinking about it. March reminded me that she took people, this lady right here, and I want us to see this diversity. She actually took people to the Selma to Montgomery March. I want you to think about that. Yeah. She actually took people. And we're going again next year. Oh, which one? Go for it. Okay, here. That's right. I know it's both of y'all. But she went last year. This lady took people to the march from Selma to Montgomery. Now, think about the risk back then. Viola Russa, a white woman, was killed for transporting African Americans. I was in Birmingham just a few days ago and saw where the 4 girls were blown up in the church. I was in the state capitol a few weeks ago where they're now having Moral Monday. Whites and blacks and Democrats and Republicans gathered a few weeks ago. And I stood there on the steps in Montgomery where Dr. King stood. And he actually said, they said we would not get here, but over their dead bodies, but we're here. And we ain't going nowhere. And he didn't say that just to black people. That was people of all different races, creeds, colors, religions, and faiths who understood the power and the importance of voting. And it was because of that moral march that we got the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And we have to remember that in times like these. Section 1, Article 6, Section 1 of our state constitution says that every person born in the United States and every person who has been naturalized 18 years of age and possessing the qualifications set out in this article shall be entitled to vote at any election by the people of the state. Voting is where we are all equal. Even if there are times when there are those who try to buy our democracy and undermine our democracy. No matter who you are, whether you're Aunt Pope or an individual, once you step into that ballot box, you have exactly the same power. The sad thing about what's going on in North Carolina is that there are representatives in this state who understand this deeply. And because they understand it, seemingly, they don't think they can earn our vote. So they want to suppress the right to vote and suppress the voting process. One of the judges in our recent federal case asked this question: why is it that politicians in this state don't want people to vote? Why is it that you would put obstacles in the way of people to vote? This right of voting for African Americans, for women, and for students and young people came through blood, sweat, and tears. So the first thing I want to do is thank God that the courts on yesterday said no. They are not going to disallow early voting precinct on the campus of Appalachian State. In fact, they said there must be. We have stood with the students at Appalachian State because we believe in the right to vote. But what does it say when the main piece of some of our elected leaders' campaign strategy is to discourage people from voting? Senator Berger actually put out an ad that we had to challenge him, where he bragged on voter ID and left in his ad the suggestion that voter ID went into effect this year. Let it be clear, no voter ID is needed this year. We believe we will beat it in court next year, but all you need is what we've always needed, and that's signature attestation, and that's enough for the citizens of North Carolina. Speaker Tillis was bold enough to go on national television on MSNBC and actually say some months ago that there wasn't any real problem with voter fraud. And I paraphrase what he said, but he in essence said, but we're just doing this just in case. No, it's not being done just in case. It's because you can't make your case for trying to suppress the vote. But people also understand that many people can't make their case with the voters, so they want to suppress who goes to the poll. Our job is we must make sure this is an on-year election, not an off-year election. And in a democracy, we can never disengage. This year is especially important because of what's at stake. Don't listen to all the lies that are being told in the political ads. It's almost shameful how people can lie in political ads. And God knows there's some whoppers being told. One ad says that the Forward Together Tomorrow Monday agenda would cost $7 billion. Well, the Tax and Policy Center, it looked at that and actually said the agenda that we are promoting, economic sustainability, addressing poverty, health care for all, educational equality, addressing the injustice in the criminal justice system, and protecting and expanding voting rights and women's rights and LGBT rights and labor rights and immigrants' rights, would actually be cost neutral and in fact supply the state with an extra $100 million rather than like the current budget that's been passed that over the next few years is going to take $5 billion from the budget. I've been people that put me in ads and I'm not even running. So that means they must be very afraid. Whenever you have to put somebody who's not even running in your ad and to try to race bait, whenever you try to make that the Forward Together movement is about just black people, can't they see all of the folk here? I mean, look at all the black people here. It seems like they just can't handle the fact that we are black, we are white, we are young, we are old, we are gay, we are straight, we are Republican, we are Democrat, we are North Carolina, and we're not going anywhere. And brown, and Native American, and Asian, and he even got a dog over there saying, vote, vote, vote. What we want you to do is follow not what people are saying in these political ads and all of the ways in which they're trying to distort the issue, but follow what people have done and exercise your right to vote. Some of them say that when they deny Medicaid expansion, they're doing what the people want. Well, 60% of North Carolinians want Medicaid expansion. Nearly 60% say you shouldn't hurt people when they're down. You should expand, you should give them long-term unemployment. Over 61% of North Carolinians have said, according to the PPP poll, that they would be willing to raise taxes to fund education and pay teachers. We should be clear when that this is about what people have done. This election is about whether we will continue on the path of extremism that hurts black people, white people, Democrats, Republicans, teachers, and others. I read a letter to the editor coming up here, and it said it better than I could ever say it. In this letter, it said, in this year's election, there's a lot at stake. For millions of Americans, access to affordable health care is at stake. For those with pre-existing conditions is at stake. When somebody says they want to appeal the Affordable Care Act, that means they want to repeal people having access to health care even if they have a pre-existing condition. And I'm going to tell you, that one hurts me because my daughter was born with pre-existing condition, brain disease. And she was operated on at Johns Hopkins University. And I prayed for the day. I prayed one time, Lord, let me just live long enough to see my baby be able to get health insurance and could not be denied. And yet now we have politicians that are running saying, elect me, and I'll repeal that law. Repeal the law that allows women to make sure the insurance covers cervical exams and breast exams and all of the necessary preventive exams. There's a lot at stake. There are those in this election who want a tax system that's not fair. There's a lot at stake here. There's a lot at stake according to this editorial. It says especially for the poor, especially for those who want to buy a senatorial election, especially those who want to be free to pollute our air and our water and want to unregulate Wall Street. There's a lot at stake. This election is really not just about individuals. It's about policy. It's about the moral depth and fabric of our state. It's about whether or not we will have Medicaid expansion. Do you know right here in Watauga County, nearly 4,000 of your brothers and sisters would have benefited from Medicaid expansion? That's what this election is about. We've had a legislature that's so extreme that they denied it. 27,000 diabetics who could have gotten treatment are not getting it because of a political decision. 40,000 women who could get preventive screening are not getting it because of a political decision. 2,800 people will die this year, not because God called them home, but because of the decision of people who are running our government. And we are losing $4.9 million a day. And we'll lose billions of dollars over the next few years because of government decisions, because of a House bill, a Senate bill that said we deny Medicaid expansion, and nobody, not even the governor, could expand Medicaid without going through the General Assembly. That's what this election is about. And these issues transcend political party. 25,000 jobs are being lost because we're not expanding Medicaid. 2,000 have already been lost. Rural hospitals are closing or cutting back. In this election, don't forget that 200 of your neighbors lost their unemployment because of the decisions in the General Assembly. 3,000 children and 3,000 adults would have benefited from earned income tax credit right here in Watauga County. Poor working people would have had a couple of hundred, $300 or $400 extra dollars in this county. That was wiped away. 900,000 people were denied earned income tax credit so that the legislature could give 23 of the wealthiest families a tax break. Serious business when you think about this election. Now, elections don't solve everything. But if you don't vote, you can't solve anything. Your vote is your voice. And so we are traveling across this state. More than 60 counties tomorrow, people will march to the polls. And we will do tours like this all the way up until November the 3rd. Because if we ever needed to vote, we sure do need to vote now. We sure do need to vote now. You know, I was reading a stat the other day, talked about the number of veterans that are being denied health care because Medicaid expansion was denied. Construction workers. I've talked to officers of the law and the cuts that have been made in our General Assembly and how it has impacted the salary of people like firemen and policemen. We're in a serious time, and it requires a serious vote. This cannot be an off-year election. Now, the NAACP and the Forward Together movement, we have produced a voter guide. It's a nonpartisan voter guide. Because what it does not tell you who to vote for, but it tells you how they voted. It tells you what they say on their website about where they stand. It tells you who has endorsed them, so that you can know where people stand. This voter guide talks about all of the judges for the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court. It looks at every member of the legislature. It looks at those persons, the 2 senatorial candidates, and all of the U.S. congresspersons, because that's who we're electing. 2 senators, every member of the United States Congress, every member of the General Assembly, members of the Supreme Court, members of the Appellate Court. This voter guide, we're asking you to share it with everybody you can, so you can decide who's with you. That's your decision. But you can't make that decision unless you know who's with them and where have they stood on the issue. In addition to that, we have voter pledge cards. Where are they, Laura? Pledge cards. And we're asking people not only to go to the polls, but to take these pledge cards and to get at least 4 other persons to go with you. Because we're reaching out especially to the 286,000 African Americans who are already registered, who voted in 2008 and 2012 but didn't vote in 2010. We're saying you can't be AWOL in this election. And we're reaching out to the 400,000 white women, 400,000 white women who voted in 2008 and voted in 2012 but didn't vote in 2010. And even though we had 70% of African Americans outvoted whites in the last two election cycles, 8 and 12, 70%, 69% of whites voted. The highest turnout we've had in years. But that still means 30% of people who are already registered did not vote. We cannot have a sit out during this democracy, during this election. What we need is a march in and a vote in and a walk in. So it's time to vote. And our mantra is, let's vote forward together. Say that with me. Let's vote forward together. 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 Thank you so very much, and I'm glad to be here with you today. We're on our way to Yancey and Mitchell and then to Buncombe County.